Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Indian Oil Durand Talks. And we are joined by none other than European football pundit Andy Cooper. Once again, Andy, welcome to the show. And I'm sure, all the fans who have witnessed today's game would be very, very happy with the way Mohammedan Sporting dominated the entire proceedings today. They were absolutely brilliant in every possible way. And the best part about today's game is we all know, Abiola Dauda, he had his first game in Mohammedan Sporting colours today, and he scored a fantastic brace. How do you see today's performance?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of when we spoke last in terms of the progress they've made as a club. It's been really positive in how they play. And obviously the importance of your international recruitment and how your processes are and what you have in place to be able to bring a player like that who's obviously played in European football as well and high-level competitions throughout his career. And obviously when you're looking for that main man as in a striker who can combine, you look, can he work with Joseph up front? Can he link play well? And ultimately, can he put the ball away and score goals? And, a nice cameo appearance so far, so good. So I know the fans will obviously be massively pleased. It'll be great that he's obviously had an impact on the game, and I'm no doubt as the tournament progresses and they go on into now, which is obviously the final stages, they can they'll really need him and have his experience in that, guys.
Absolutely, Andy. And the best part about Mohammedan Sporting's perspective is they are the only Hero I-League team to be there in this competition alive and in the knockout stage, because Rajasthan United, they're yet to play. They're the second team from the Hero I-League perspective, but the ISL teams, they have been performing well. But it's good to see that the Hero I-League sides as well, like Mohammedan Sporting and Rajasthan United, they're chipping in with some very, very interesting results.
Yeah, and there's potential huge differences in budgets and how much they're able to attract top players to the clubs, being in the I-League as opposed to ISL. But obviously it shows what you do on the grass and what you do on the training pitch and what you do in terms of recruitment, and the staff that you bring in is vitally important to galvanise a team. And we know often there's not many clubs apart from some of the big five in Europe that maybe have a short turnover in manager and continue the success, for example, Chelsea. But if a team get a manager and a sustained way of playing and they're able to attract players and he's able to get on the grass and work with them with a good backroom staff and a good team to support, being able to bring players in, then it shows what you can do over a sustained period of time. And obviously the bearing fruits of the labour now, that was done well over a year ago now, with when they started the kind of project in how they play. And that's, really come to the forefront in the last few games, and they're able to take these teams on with no fear, or don't think there's any doubt in anybody's minds who's watching the games now, the level of they are, and with respect to the ISL teams who are maybe making huge changes to the squads and giving other people opportunities to earn game time. You can only play the team that's in front of you, and so far they've obviously handled that with absolute, control so far.
Absolutely, and a very, very interesting question which comes from Abdul Momin. Marcus Joseph is not getting a goal. Is there any problem for him? I mean, he has already assisted thrice in this competition, scored once, and he has been controlling the game behind the strikers. Do you think this is a massive, massive leap from Mohammedan Sporting's perspective as well? Such a great ball player, creating chances for his team rather than scoring goals as well.
I think that's the trade-off. And if you get the player to buy into the system, to say, look, you might not be at the end product of the move that's played, but actually you can come a bit shorter. You can use your strength. You can link play. You can get round players. You can provide the ball to go out wide, and then it might be the other players that finish. As long as you get the buy-in from the player, then great. You've got an additional player to your team, as somebody who's obviously maybe not able to compete in that area of the pitch like it has been previous, but he's able to put other elements to his game, which is obviously providing assists, bringing other players into the game, but not leading the line from the front. He's leaving that to other people, conserving his energy behind the striker, and then being able to use that experience that he has in key moments of the game to unlock defenders.
Well, before we go ahead about the preview of tomorrow's game between Odisha FC and Bengaluru FC, we'll just quickly ask one more question about tonight's game, about Mohammedan Sporting's strengths going forward. They are having two outstanding centre backs in the form of Osmane Ndiaye and Shahid Sahin marshalling the defence, having a cushion like Nuruddin as a defensive midfielder, and then on the up front they have two outstanding foreign recruits as well, along with some magnificent Indian performers who have been performing day in day out in this particular competition. How do you see Mohammedan Sporting's chances going forward from here on to lift the title, which they couldn't do in the last season despite reaching in the big final?
Yeah, they've obviously put themselves in a great position to do it with balance in the way they play. So yeah, they have got attacking threats in wide areas, and I think that's what they've been able to do. But quality teams over sustained periods are built from a foundation at the back. You know, great sides that have been able to do it. And obviously, if you get your foundations right in terms of how you defend, and then you're able to top up with the type of foreign players, imports that they've been able to bring at the top end of the pitch as well, then you can get your balance right. And I think we've always said, and I've been on your show before talking about 𝐀𝐧𝐝𝐲, the wide areas that they have, they can be really skillful and tricky, and they can unbalance defenders. They can get round the sides. If you think of how they played against Bengaluru, when they got round the side of them against their back three, they are a real danger. And then obviously they've got the quality in the box, but a good, well-balanced side. What will obviously be the test is not only this competition, which is huge, and obviously a chance at big silverware and something that you said obviously they fell short last time, but also then taking it into the season ahead, because, you know, doing that week in, week out is what we'll be building for. But they've obviously got that solid base in definitely how they're playing. And I think all what's going to happen is they're going to have to find the best, the systems obviously kind of seem to be set, but they seem to find the best structure in how they play with that defenders, because they obviously have 2 out of 3 to choose from every game, and it might be depending on the opposition which ones they go for.
Abdul Momin has a question. One more question for Andy, sir. Shahid Sahin is a little bit slow as compared to Osmane Ndiaye. So how do you see this?
Yeah, this physical speed, which obviously is different. So Shaheen is physically slower, but if you have experience, you have knowledge of the game, you can buy that back in your movement. So you could start a little bit deeper, you could step in a little bit higher and quicker against a player who you don't want to be able to turn you. So what he's able to, what maybe he lacks in kind of physical speed, I do feel it has been able to make up for in his positioning. But when he is caught out of position and he has to turn and recover, that's when you have obviously question marks about how they play. But so far, obviously, so good. It's just over the longevity of, you know, latter stages of tournaments that when they're up against these tricky strikers, that might prove a little bit costly. It's a very fair question and a good point that attributes of defenders are different, and some people would prefer to have defend tight to the man, and some will maybe give a little bit more space if they know that they don't have that speed.
Well, going to tomorrow's game, as we promised, Smruti Ranjan Das has a question. What are your thoughts about Odisha FC? What a sensational tournament they have so far. They have won all their games. They have been reigning in goals. And they started their campaign with a massive victory over Northeast United. They have signed some outstanding foreign contingents this season around. How do you see Odisha FC's chances tomorrow against Bengaluru FC? Remember, Sunil Chhetri-led Bengaluru FC would be raring to go, because Sunil Chhetri has won all the domestic competitions in India, bearing this Indian Oil Durand Cup.
I think it's probably, you know, one of the fascinating matchups so far, because you've got a team that are coming on such a good journey and such strong results and performances so far, against maybe a team that might suspect that they've had a more difficult route and difficult path, and they've blended, you know, huge changes in Bengaluru in terms of how they play, and also the number of bodies that the number of changes to the starting lineup. Sometimes 8 or 9 players are different. It's hard to predict a lineup. In terms of Odisha, look, they've averaged over 60% ball possession. That doesn't necessarily mean they're using it well, but clearly they are. It doesn't mean they're just keeping it. And you show that teams have tried to manage that differently against them. Blasters, obviously, some teams have just sat in and dropped off and let them have the ball. Other teams have tried to go toe-to-toe with them, and obviously they have good possession. They're able to get forward. I've been really impressed that they're able to, in that they play, you know, the 4-3-3 shape that they that they're used to and that they've had before with 𝐀𝐧𝐝𝐲𝐝, who's obviously previously been in India and had that setup. But they also have looked to play with a back three as well, or they can play with a back three as well. It's quite obvious that they're able to do that. One thing really fascinates me will be the matchup in the wide areas in terms of how the front three of Odisha. We've seen that obviously Bengaluru are playing with three centre backs, 3-5-2, and they maybe sometimes can be exposed in these wide channels and these wide areas. And that's really a strength of Odisha. And I can expect to see a lot of 1v1 battles in these areas, lots of crosses and cutbacks coming from there, which will result in throw-ins and corners and difficult moments. And I do think that's where they've been strong. What happens with Odisha, the longer they're able to have possession of the ball and they're able to sustain it, they're able to then get the defenders, the fullbacks forward and create even more problems. So they've been really strong. The flip side of that is defensively, obviously, they haven't conceded, and that's the foundation we've discussed before with Mohammed and how they've played. But they're able to counter-attack quickly when they need to, so they can soak up pressure, which again they'll have to against a Bengaluru team again who like to have possession of the ball, and then they can hit them on their moments of transition, their counter-attacks and break through quickly. So they've been really strong, and obviously they've got the quality. Obviously Jerry's come on with 3 goals, Crespo as well, and they've got abundance of talent throughout the team, and obviously emergence of young Indian players as well. So Narinder, who's I remember watching the left centre back, and correct me if I'm wrong, Suman, but I know he played in Indian Arrows back in my time in India. Was a young player we looked at and watched, and I think people I think people like him that might not get a lot of the plaudits because of the work of other people in the team, but as a young defender, it's massive credit to how he's played. Obviously, he's trusted to play there for multiple minutes when there's a lot of rotations, and I think he's really come of age and been able to show that he's obviously warranting a place in a really strong side.
Well, what do you think about Bengaluru FC? Of course, they started off really well. The competition between Sunil Chhetri and Roy Krishna that got headlines. Players like Shiva Shakti, but I mean, he has already made headlines as well. But how do you see them coming back from the performance which they made against Mohammedan Sporting the other day? Yes, it was a very, very late goal, but Mohammedan Sporting dominated that game. And all of a sudden, coming from that performance to face this in-form Odisha FC side, had you been in the dressing room of Bengaluru FC, of course, fellow Yakshaman, Simon Grayson is there, but what would be your tip of advice for Bengaluru FC going forward?
It seems to me it's been really individual and basic mistakes that might have cost them in the games when you look at how they've conceded the goal. So they do like to have the ball as well, and clearly they've had over 60% of the ball in the games they've played, and that won't be the case tomorrow because both teams can't have that amount of possession. So there'll have to be a trade-off somewhere. And the vulnerabilities have come, if you look at the goals they concede, restarts and set plays, and then individual errors. Either the header that went headed backwards and played the man through, or a goalkeeper mishandling the ball. So there might have been periods where they have had to suffer a little bit, but they've obviously played in a strong group. So, part of me is thinking that this won't be just you look at the form table and you look at both journeys they've had and you think it's just a walkover for Odisha. You do think that there might be opportunities for Bengaluru in how they play to be able to be aggressive as well and be able to stamp their authority on the game. But it is in them wide areas and the types of matchups in there that I do feel that'll be the difference. But it's maybe down to some of the fixing the individual errors and some of the things that have led to goals that have been really fundamental stuff that I'm sure the manager, the head coach will be disappointed with or will want to rectify for sure.
Well, we're talking about Odisha FC and their attacking prowess. How do you see the combination between Saul Crespo and Pedro Martin?
Yeah, they've done great, haven't they, so far? Obviously, are on the same wavelength and been able to link well in that system. There's you look for both teams. The attacking threat is there, isn't it? You've talked about Krishna as well, and we know how many changes they make to the team. So it'll be interesting to see what the lineups are for Bengaluru, what they choose to go with. But obviously, they have Xavi there in a midfield role as well. But in terms of Odisha, I've been impressed with how they play. They obviously are a real attacking threat, but people like Jerry come on with less minutes on the clock and is able to put 3 goals in so far. So it's a lot of the hard work is done by the other players that you've mentioned in Crespo and Martin, but in Pedro Martin, but that maybe gives an opportunity for other players then to come on and finish off the game well. You know, I know there's been lots of squad rotation in there, so they've been on fire, and I'm sure they'll be looking forward to taking it into another competitive game against obviously a big ISL rival.
Well, we are talking about the players. Let's talk about the two outstanding coaches. Joseph Gumbau has been in the helm of this particular team for a significant period of time now, and Simon Grayson, he has come in this particular season only, but slowly but steadily he's having a strong grip on the team, isn't it?
Yeah, there's an identity, and I know it's really a buzzword in coaching, and obviously my background as a coach, it's something that you want to impart on a team. You want everyone to draw on and pull in the same direction, and that comes from how you play. You can see these real clear ways from both teams, probably most clear out of a lot of the teams that have played, Mohammedan as well. There's multiple ones that are just starting to have a real clear structure in how they want to play, and sometimes that's not based on your opposition. It's trusting yourself. It's not just changing how you play to fit the opposition. It's actually backing yourself and saying, look, we play this style. We respect the opponent, but we don't fear them. We can, we're going to go our way. We're going to play our system against them. So, two out and out strikers for Bengaluru, like they've done previously, maybe a 4-3-3, but also it's the players in them shapes. It's not all about the shapes and the formations. It's about the identity. It's about how they play, that counter-attacking that Odisha have been able to impart on the opposition and being able to score goals from. And also teams like Bengaluru who have been able to obviously pick teams off and play and break teams down against sometimes teams who sit back off them. So really well matched, a real kind of different ways of doing it. But both managers clearly have a style and an identity of what they're looking for in their teams that sometimes it takes a lot of time to develop, and not often in obviously top level football, elite football, you don't obviously always get that time.
Absolutely. Question from Sattam Samrat Panigrahi, and the question is, what's your prediction and pre-match analysis regarding tomorrow's match between Odisha and Bengaluru? Of course, there is a lot of things. There are a lot of things which we have been discussing so far. But what would be a prediction? That's quite interesting.
Well, I did kind of get the last prediction right when I was on. I did say 2-2, and it was 1-1. But a score draw is not bad. It might get me half a point. This one is, I think, a lot more difficult to predict because probably Odisha will go in heavy favourites off their background. But I do feel that Bengaluru do have a performance in them. I do feel like they've got big players in big moments. So I think it is going to be a lot closer than maybe the form table does suggest.
Well, comment from Dr. Nilanjan Acharji. Of course, about today's game, actually. Abiola Doda, he has made headlines today, and he has been on the talking points in Indian football at the moment after his strong 45 minutes performance. Abiola Doda is a top recruit. Hats off to the management. How do you see this significant instrumental changes in terms of the attacking armory of the transfer window? Abiola Doda, yes, he played in 6 of the top 25 leagues across the globe. Became top goal scorers in various parts of top divisions in Europe. Coming to India, making a statement straight away. As a coach, how do you see this performance being infected in the entire squad?
Well, as a coach, I think it's great because it keeps you in work, it keeps you busy, and you get the plaudits. But for one game, obviously, he needs to sustain it over a period in a cup competition, obviously a knockout tournament, and then into the season. But, part of me wants him to be pushed by future young Indian strikers, and that people don't always have to go into the transfer market for the marquee signing, which is normally traditionally a number 9, is that, the country can continue to strive and develop players throughout its academies and its youth systems and its programs, that players are able to knock on the door and want an opportunity themselves to be able to say, look, have a look at me. I'm worth investing in. I'm worth playing. But I know that's where we are at the moment, and it's obviously a great recruitment so far. but he'll now be challenged, I'm sure, by the management and his head coach to back it up and to show what he can do again, and make sure that it's consistency that in goals and assists and minutes on the pitch for them.
Absolutely. And then coming back into tomorrow's games preview, Andy, of course, we are talking about the foreign players like as we have discussed in Odisha FC, Pedro Martin, Saul Crespo. They are performing so well. Indian players like Nanda Kumar, Jerry, if it comes in terms of Bengaluru FC, players like Sunil, Udanta, Faisal Ali, Shiva Shakti. How do you see the Indian players chipping in and overshadowing the foreign players as well in some extent?
Yeah, I kind of felt a lot of them. Faisal Ali has had limited minutes really, and I think they kind of really impact games. And I know they'll be feeling out the players in terms of who is going to be consistent, who's going to be able to use moving forward. But I do think there's definitely players like that who have really stepped forward and been able to step up to the plate and obviously make things count. And I really like it when you get the centre backs and they give it, it might be an overseas recruit with a younger player like we discussed with 𝐂𝐨𝐲𝐝 in terms of how they can link and how they can match each other and work together and bring each other on when you have two players, in a similar position next to each other, like centre backs or midfielders. I sometimes think it doesn't have to just be the overseas recruit is a number 9 and he scores goals. If you can have someone who's a centre back, like obviously I've got Delgado and people like this for Odisha, you can actually work with the other centre half, a young Indian player as well, and make sure that he increases his level and he learns the arts of the game, as well as being fantastic as what they're able to do as well in their own right. But just having that extra bit of information or level from somebody who's played, in a really high level can be massively beneficial.
Well, Rupakshan Kangbang has a question. How do you see the attacking skills of this Odisha side?
Yeah, it's a front three, out and out. There's energy there. There's pace to go 1v1 in wide areas, and then they've got the support with midfielders behind, and then one deep midfielder just sitting there. So they can lock teams in for long periods and move the ball around well, or they're able to sit off, absorb that pressure, and then when they win it back, they can fire. One thing you notice when you look back at the games, there's lots of moments where defenders are running back to their own goal. There's a lot of distance, 10 yards, 10 meters between the attacker who has the ball driving or the winger and the opposition defence who are retreating. And I think that's probably what sticks out as an attacking strength for Odisha, that they're able to get at back fours or back threes quite aggressively and quite quickly, and there's less kind of direct play.
Well, last questions on the fan side we're taking in this show, and this is from Sattam Samrat Panigrahi. A question for a coach's point of view. Which is more preferable, a position-based football like A.T.K. Mohun Bagan coach Juan Manolo Ferrando, or a direct and counter-attacking football like Joseph Gombau, or the other coaches who have been doing well?
Really good question, and I will answer it as honest as I can without trying to sound like I'm sitting on the fence, because I'm going to say, one, initially it depends on your players, depends on what your players are able to do. Are your players able to play possession-based football? If not, are you able to have the time to teach them it, or can you change the players? If you can't, you're going to have to go with what you think is going to give you more time to work with the players. That might be one way of doing it. If you have a longer pre-season, then you may be able to spend more time building your style over time. But you'll see evidence, throughout time of different ways of doing it, where a team go in straight away. This is my way, this is my style, and it doesn't always work, and it takes time. There's the other way where slowly over time a team integrates and moves to a more of a style that the manager wants. But ultimately, when you set your team up and they cross the white line and they represent you and your club and your fan base and everybody, you need to make sure that you're comfortable that they can execute your game plan and your style, and they're not, being fake in terms of they're being true to themselves in how they want to play. So there's no kind of right or wrong style. It's based around more your own values, what the players can do. But lastly, the club's style as well. You know, throughout time, there's clubs, Indian clubs, South American clubs, European clubs that have you mentioned Ajax, you know, possession-based football. You mention other clubs, you know, their style of play. It's ingrained in the system, and that sometimes doesn't matter regardless of the coach. So I hope I've answered the question without obviously going around the houses in it. But for me, it depends on what players you have and also the culture of the club.
Shruti Ranjan Das has another question. Do you think 𝐀𝐨𝐲𝐸 isn't fit for the 3-5-2 formation? He used to do good for Odisha FC. Does this change in formation affect his performance?
Yeah, that's going to be a key matchup for me. That if they match them up 3-5-2 and everybody's man for man, whether he will have the impact that he's able to do in other games, because it might be an unusual role for him. More unusual when the team doesn't have the ball, how he's able to get his positioning right, and then being able to link play and being able to, you know, so if he's able to get in them little pockets and the opposition have matched them up 3-5-2, could be a little bit more tricky for him. If they play 4-3-3, the opposition in Odisha, I think then he's got a better chance of being able to play his normal game and then link with, obviously, Roy Krishna and with Chetri as well up there. So I think it will depend on how the opposition matched up, but I do obviously appreciate the question in terms of it's a new role for him, playing in this role just behind and involved in midfield and in attacking actions.
The last question before we wrap this show up. Bengaluru FC. Yes.
You're not going to ask me for the score, are you?
No. Before that, I'll certainly come into that one. But before that, I mean, Bengaluru FC, they played their group stage matches at Kolkata. On the flip side of it, Odisha FC, they were playing their games over there at the Indira Gandhi Stadium over there in Guwahati. So, do you think that getting used to the conditions of Kolkata would be helping Bengaluru FC to some extent when Odisha FC will be playing their first game in Kolkata this season?
Yeah, potentially. It might be a small edge in terms of the comfort for the players, and they know the routine and they know, but I would expect at this level they are all professional, and the management treat them and make sure that there's no complacency and everything's done to make sure that everything's ready for the performance. But you would know that if you've had the opportunity to play there and train there, and you've had experiences there that are positive, it obviously can be an advantage.
Quick prediction for tomorrow's game. Scoreline.
I do understand why Odisha could be heavy favourites, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a small shock in this way. It wouldn't be a shock, but because of the route that they've had, because they're both big clubs. But I wouldn't be surprised if Bengaluru got through.
Interesting. Of course. Thanks a lot, Andy. Insightful discussion once again. A lot of fans asked their questions. I tried to take as many questions as possible. Of course, I missed a few, and sincere apologies for that as well. But we enjoyed a magnificent action today as Kolkata Giants, Mohammedan Sporting are through to the semi-finals from the first qualifier. And tomorrow, as we know, Odisha FC will be up against Bengaluru FC, another classic Hero ISL teams clash in this 131st edition of the Indian Oil Durand Cup. Keep your eyes on the official Facebook page as well as on the social media and YouTube handle of Durand Cup. Stay tuned. Thank you, Andy, for joining us.
Thank you.